Hello everyone, my name is Garvin and I read things and natter about them on the internet for your entertainment. So today is just a short video. I'm kind of winding down from hot Atlanta summer, so this is just going to be a companion video to a written book review, which is going to be linked in the description below. The book I'm talking about is Mariner's Wake by Adam Marsh, published by Brick Cave Media. Now, full disclosure, Brick Cave Media does donate to my patron. They are not paying for this review. This is not sponsored content. And this book I paid full price for. Next week's book I did get for free. So I do want to make a note of that, and I'll be mentioning that next week as well. I do also want to let you know that my patrons do get to vote on future content as well as access bonus videos. So if you can spare $1 a month, why not join the ranks of my ever-wise patrons? Of course, if you'd like to support this channel in other ways, please share the videos, comment, like, and of course, subscribe, as all of that helps me in my eternal battle with the dread Lord algorithm. Terror be on his name. Thank you. Now, let's get to the book, right? Mariner's Wake takes place near or at the dawn of the 22nd century, and the world has been through some rather significant changes. Most of them bad. Very bad. The United States, for example, is now a one-party dystopian cyberpunk state allied to or outright part of the Russian Federation, which is a superpower and doing things like using the US Navy to blockade the European Union to twist their arms in trade talks. The US, like most one-party states, is incredibly corrupt. The party controls all the media and uses sham elections to provide a veneer of legitimacy, something we actually see in modern-day Russia. This is the result of a civil war, and unlike the last one, the bad guys won. Mariner's Wake, however, doesn't take place in the US. It takes place mainly in the Pacific Ocean and is told through the eyes of Kara, who's a mariner. The Mariners are the descendants of a faction of losers of the American Civil War who fled into the Pacific Ocean, and they founded a culture based on communal living, sustainability, and working to repair and restore the ecological damage that's been done to the Pacific. They reject materialistic culture. They reject the corrupt nature of the American political process in this time frame. And if that wasn't enough, there's also been several armed conflicts between the Mariners and the United States since they fled the continent, and this has only increased the amount of bad blood on both sides. The fact that most of the interaction between Mariners and the U.S. is through corrupt U.S. naval captains who are often pushing into Mariner territory to aid in wildlife poaching and illegal toxic dumping really doesn't help on that. Interestingly enough, Kara, our protagonist, was actually born in the United States, although she was born in a free trade zone, areas of the country where the government has basically withdrawn to, quote, let business flourish, unquote. This has gone about as horribly as you think it has. Kara, in fact, fled her birth home before her 7th birthday to avoid being sold to a cocaine-dealing pimp. So, being adopted by the Mariners saved her life, and she had no reason at all not to violently reject her American heritage and fully embrace being a Mariner. In this situation, who can blame her? She can't associate America with anything but degradation, starvation, and death. Whereas the Mariners are her family who saved her from that, right? She is, however, challenged in her beliefs that America is basically Mordor and there is no such thing as a good American when she has to cooperate with Americans on a desperate mission. Because an unarmed American ship shows up at the Mariner capital island requesting help. A secret stash of pre-Civil War WMDs has been found by a gang of criminals, and if the Mariners and Americans don't cooperate to get to those weapons first, then, well, You're going to have a criminal gang selling nuclear bombs to the highest bidder, and I really hope we can all agree this is a bad thing. However, not everyone in this mission agrees on what should be done with the bombs after they've been retrieved from the criminals. This is a point of conflict that's going to make things complicated and do so in a hurry. I'm not going to say much more than that because I don't want to spoil the story. I do go into more detail in the written reviews without spoilers, so if you really need to know more before you look at this book, read the review. That said, I encourage you to read this book. Mariner's Wake was a fun read, and it's under 300 pages. It's got interesting multidimensional characters. Even the villains are understandable in their motivations, and they're often strangely charismatic. Our heroes are really well written. The dialogue is really nice and it flows well. It's set in a world that feels real and complex, and that's something I love. If you've been watching some of my older videos, y'all know that I'm a sucker for good world building. And what I also like is that Mr. Marsh does a good job of organically revealing the world through character conversations and actions, which is something I really enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good appendix. If you are a world builder with a story, please don't hesitate to stick an appendix after the story so I can start digging through and just looking up random things about your world. I will do that and enjoy myself. But I do think massive paragraphs of info dumping in the story itself should kind of qualify as a sin because it drags down your pace, it distracts from the plot, and it kind of derails the actions of the story into let's talk about missiles for 3 pages. Dedicated science fiction fans know exactly who I'm referencing. That said, I have seen well done info dumps. Uh, Yojimbo, the comic book about the samurai rabbit, comes to mind, where they will basically have prologues detailing elements of Japanese culture that are about to become major plot points. I've seen other stories where a third person narrator explains something so a reader understands the vital plot element. It's not always bad, but it's best kept to an absolute minimum. And if you want to throw more in there, writers, please, please, the appendix was good enough for Professor Tolkien. It's good enough for you. I've mentioned the dialogue. Let me talk about the action, which is also really good to read. Mr. Marsh breaks it up by having variety in his action. The characters are just as often fighting the sea or other elements of their environment as opposed to just constantly having gunfights with hostile human beings. Having that kind of variety is great and keeps your action scenes from all blurring together. Now, that said, there are plenty of gunfights, ship to ship actions, and crazy boarding night fights. So, if that is your jam, it's in this book. You'll love it. It's a pretty great thing to read. I'm going to stop right there. I know I've kind of veered off into a commercial on this, but I really enjoyed reading this book. So, if you'd like to know more, please check out the written review linked in the description below. There'll also be a link where you can buy the book for yourself. Feel free to leave a note that I sent you. There's 2 more book reviews coming, and then we're going to look at some rediscovered lost cities before I call it for the year. Let me also just give a big shout out to Big Steve, the channel's biggest supporter. Uh, couldn't do this without you, man. I hope everyone joins me for the next couple of videos. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, keep reading.